Good morning, St. Jude's. It's good to be with you as we celebrate morning prayer on this Trinity Sunday. Also appropriate that I'm sharing the bread of the Word with you today as I celebrate 8 years in the priesthood. It goes without saying that St. Jude's was an integral part of that journey, both as a student out of Huron College and also teaching me the ropes in terms of constructing liturgy and participating and producing homilies, the bumps of pastoral care when I did it well and when I wasn't so good at it. All of that, St. Jude's was very influential in making sure that I was well prepared, well trained, and given the whole time a sense of support and love. So thank you for that. As I approach this day, obviously, anytime you approach an anniversary, be it ordination or birthday or wedding anniversary, there's always a chance that you have a desire to reflect, a desire to look back and see how some of the experiences that shaped you are now informing how you live your life and how you understand the world. And I definitely have that. I'm going to share a part of my story that I don't think many of you have heard. I know some did at a pastoral care meeting when I celebrated my 5-year anniversary. I told this story, so to all 5 or 10 people of you that were there, apologies for repeating myself, but this will be new to most of you. On the day that I was to be ordained, it was an interesting time. I had just come back from the Sisterhood of St. John the Divine in Toronto, which is a retreat center, and I was there with Carrie Irwin and Margaret Walker and Laura Lightfoot, who were ordained alongside me, and we had a wonderful retreat and a good time away to reflect and be together and be surrounded by the sisters in prayer. But as I headed home, something felt a little bit different. My ordination to the priesthood, of course, was the culmination of a dream that was long in the making. I was one of those weirdos that knew from a very young age, probably about 7 or 8, that being a priest was something that I wanted to do. And I was super excited. This was something that I had looked forward to for a long time. My family was excited for me to see that dream finally come true. And yet, there was a part of my heart that was broken. You see, about 2 months prior, right around my birthday at the end of April, I had broken up with my then girlfriend. This was somebody that I had dated only for 10 months or so, less than a year. But it was somebody that I had come to rely on and love, and found out that in all likelihood, she was my best friend. We had shared everything together. And because we had broken up and because we weren't really communicating at that point, I mean, why would we? There wasn't any chance that she was going to be at the ordination. When I think about it now, I'm okay with it, and that's why I'm, sharing this story. But at the time, this day of great joy and celebration and hope was overshadowed by a certain sense of sadness. It was overshadowed by the fact that my best friend, my confidant, the one whose company I enjoyed the most, wouldn't be physically in the building when I realized my dream. And that hurt. And that broke my heart. So that even as I was surrounded by my family and I was surrounded by the clergy and laity of the Diocese of Huron, and there was much singing and rejoicing and, just excitement over 3 new priests in the diocese. I was aware that I was coming to this moment in my life, this entering into vocation with a broken heart, full of joy, full of expectation for the future, full of thankfulness that all of these steps had finally been completed. But knowing part of me was sad, part of me was heartbroken. And if I'm honest, if I reflect on it now, I think perhaps this is a similar thing, a similar feeling to what we have today. Amidst COVID-19, I have seen many wonderful things. I have seen people who reach out via phone and online forums to make sure that others are doing okay, whether they're friends that they've known for a long time or just somebody on the parish list that they've decided to call and check up on. I have seen people who have engaged in extraordinary acts of kindness. The whole idea of ninjaing, right? Doing something kind and totally taking somebody by surprise, not letting them know that that you have been part of it. You just kind of leave gifts where they are and let them enjoy the bounty which you have provided and which God has provided through you. And that's amazing to see. And at the same time, just like my ordination, a part of my heart is broken. I hear about the events in the States. I hear about the death, the murder of George Floyd. An innocent man who was accused, not even proven, to have counterfeited a $20 bill. And he was pinned down, a knee was placed on his neck, and it wasn't lifted until he died. My heart breaks for his family, for the Black community, for all of the people for whom this event has dug up so much hurt, so much pain. This is not heartache that is going to go away. This is a heartache that will stay with us, and rightfully so. It's a heartache that's meant to remind us that even in the midst of joy, even in the midst of goodness, there's going to be points where our hearts are broken and we are undone. So what are we supposed to do about it? That's a question that I think everyone is asking themselves. What do we do now? I think on this feast of the Trinity, we look to the God who loves us and forms us from the dust, who redeems us and gives us life, in whom we live, move, and have our being. In the faith that we profess a Trinity, a Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. 3 persons, one God. And I'm not going to sit here and try to unravel the entire mystery for us. I don't think that's the point of the feast day, or indeed of theology in general. I think the mystery of the Trinity is this. Love is perfected when we live in community. The Father and the Son work together so that the whole world can be saved and redeemed and made new. And the fire of the Holy Spirit is the love that unites the Father and the Son, that allows them to stand up for justice, to care for the widow and the orphan, to proclaim forgiveness to sinners, to say that the world that we experience now is not the world that we will always experience. There will be a time when all are brought to God's holy mountain. There will be a time when every tear is wiped away from our eye, when God's kingdom will come on earth, and his will, his gracious will and gentle and loving rule, will be done. We, like the God whom we worship, are called to live in community. When the Father sent Jesus to live and be in the world, in the midst of all our messiness, he sent Jesus to the poor, the lame, the sick, those who were ostracized and outcasts from society, those, indeed, who were considered the minority. When we contemplate what the love of the Trinity means for us, it means that we are called to love and be in community. If we're not, if we're trying to do things on our own, if we're trying to think that we can be the sole arbiter of what is true and what is good, we're not reflecting the life, the love, the image, or the likeness of God. We have to be with others in solidarity and hope and grace. All lives don't matter until Black lives matter, until brown lives matter, until Japanese lives matter, until First Nations lives matter. In our history of Canada, all of these groups have faced racism, discrimination, hate, and vitriol. Our lives only matter to the extent that we live for others. Our lives as Christians means that our lives are not our own. We, like Jesus, are called into the field to be with the oppressed, to be with the poor, to be with the minority. To recognize that when our heart is broken, it doesn't mean that there's going to be a lack of joy. It doesn't mean that everything has to be doom and gloom, but it does mean we have to pay attention. It does mean that when we hear lament, when we hear about injustice, that lament is real. And we need to take the time to listen. Just as the three members of the Trinity listen to and compliment one another. I mean, where would the world be if the Son didn't listen to the Father? If God heard Jesus' prayer for the disciples and just said, no, I'm going to do my own thing. They don't need to be one. They don't need to be protected. Right? That's crazy. What would happen if the Spirit decided all of a sudden to act on her own and try to do things independently? All of a sudden, disconnected from that love of Father and Son, the Spirit just becomes a bestower of gifts with no rhyme or reason. Right? The mystery of love is this, that the God who loves us, who formed us in his own image and likeness, calls us to be in community and in solidarity. We will have our hearts broken. We will hurt, maybe even for a long time. Those wounds are open and raw, and it fills us with sadness. But here's the difference. Led by the light of faith, we are told that the love of the Trinity will bind up all the wounds. That the love of the Trinity, shared in his community, which is the church, will be the place where God's kingdom is reflected and known, where all have worth, where all lives matter, because we recognize the diversity and the amazing contributions that everyone brings. And we strive for a time when injustice is no more, where people are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And so I pray today, in the midst of hurt and open wounds, that we will find healing together. That we will take the time to listen. That we will take seriously the call to faith that reminds us that our lives are not about us, our lives are not our own, but rather we are to be servants. Let me be your servant. Let me be the one who helps you through the darkness. And when I don't understand, teach me. I will listen. We all need to take the time to listen, to love, to act, all in accordance with the faith that Jesus calls us to, modeled by the cross, the empty tomb, and the love of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.